Alrighty, so the battle plan. Trying to figure this one out because I'm looking at my schedule. Um, it's perhaps overly ambitious of myself to spill the beans on some of what I'm hoping to do, um, but I think it helps elaborate a little bit more of what I'm trying to work out here. There we go. I found the live chat feature. It was somehow turned off, so I didn't see the previous posts before, but I can see anything now. Hopefully, potentially. We'll see how that works. Anyway, so what I'm looking at right now is for my other channel, I've been traveling to each of the 48 states for the project that I'm doing over there. And the secret is I've wanted to do something similar for YouTubers and content creators and basically talk to people in each of the 50 states that are doing YouTube or Twitch or web comic designers or other people who create online content. And I'd love to be able to talk with them one-on-one and learn what their process is and maybe collab with them and that sort of thing. It's a little bit harder to do for this type of topic than it is what I do on the other channel, which is I can go to a place where people are doing things and the place is where I show up. Whereas, hey, you're on YouTube. Want to talk with me about what you do? I'll show up at your house. Yeah, that doesn't work as well. Admittedly, I'm not saying that. I'm like I could meet people at the libraries, or we could do like a YouTuber meetup in like a public space, um, like a mall or something, and talk about our experiences and our strategies for dealing with it, and whatnot, and learn from each other. But yeah, I can understand some reluctance to meet with strangers you've never met and who heard about you from online. I get it. So it's a little harder to get that one to work. But I figure at some point being able to get like some of the hard ones to get to for me. I drove across the country for the project on the other channel, and I've been to all the lower 48. Getting to Alaska is difficult, and getting to Hawaii is difficult. I'm looking at doing Alaska in the summertime. And so if I want to get anybody connected with YouTubers or online content creators to do at the same time, that would make it sufficiently easier for me to meet with them when I'm already going to be there for the project I'm already doing. I can drive back around to the other 48 states easily enough again in a couple years or so to visit other content creators. And I can get some of the ones in the local area first um, before heading out for big cross country stuff. So, like the Upper East Coast, United States, I can do that. And I mean, I can get 7 or 8, 9, 10 states before I have to worry about like encroaching on my time to do other things. And 10 states of content, like maybe one a week or something like that. Um, I mean, that gets you some time. But, getting to Hawaii, getting to Alaska, those those are sort of like you do it kind of once. You don't do it all the time, at least not from where I am. And so part of what I've been looking at lately is um, it looks like by early March, I might have my chance to take the flight to Hawaii. I want to, you go to Hawaii when it's winter, and you go to Alaska when it's summer, at least in the northern hemisphere. So you go where it's cool when it's hot, and you go where it's hot when it's cold. And So if I have the chance to get to Hawaii for the other project, I kind of want to see what I can do for this channel as well. And so some of that might be doing a vlog, traveling videos, and any collaboration stuff that I can get while I'm out there. And then trying to figure that part out. And the other thing I'm noticing, even on this 2 day sort of days off period of time, like the first and second 2 days since New Year's, where I'm not actively chasing down some project that I'm working on. And I'm going to admit, I find both being fidgety and sort of desperate to do something, and also at the same time risking slipping into a sort of a lazy unwillingness to do anything when I get started again. Like I have an issue sometimes with like I have this idea of a project I want to do, and the hardest part of doing that project is just getting started. Like once I'm going, you can't make me stop. I'll just keep going, and I should probably not keep this on my lap if it's going to keep shaking like that. But you can't make me stop a project. Like I have worked in retail environments in the past where somebody says, "Oh, if you look at the back section back there, the area where we got the sheets or something like that needs to be totally redone." And I said, "All right, I'll go take care of it." And like, "All right, thanks." I go into the back. I'll just tear it apart and like start sorting and putting things in the right place and making rows of the same pattern and the sizing and arrange them in the right order so that you go from small to large sheeting systems. And in a section on a size, they're ordered by the number in a certain pattern. Is like rebuilding this thing so it's an amazing display. And inevitably, when I'm into this project, somebody would call me up and say, like, it's time for your lunch break. And I'm like, leave me alone. I am doing something. Please don't bother me. And it's just because when I get into the pattern of like, I know where I'm going, I know what I need to do, and like I'm achieving things and I'm making progress, don't make me stop in the middle of progress because you're just going to completely derail me. And if you derail me when I come back to trying to do it, it's going to take me minutes to ramp back up to where I was. And that's like, I get frustrated when I have to kind of reboot, and almost feel like I'm starting over again. And so, like, when I really get into the swing of doing something, disrupting that pattern can be completely disabling. So like I'm noticing like these last 2 days is like I was working on something every single day this past week. These last 2 days, I've done nothing. And I'm sort of looking at this coming week and going like, oh, I gotta start like running and getting ready to hit the ground so that I'm prepared to do what I need to do. Like I can't just kind of like, oh, it's tomorrow night and I didn't plan for this appropriately and I don't have the momentum that I was holding before. So now it's sort of like building that effort to overcome the inertia of not doing anything. And so I was just like kind of pushing through to get that done. And so originally my plan for going forward was to do, the book, the movie, the board game, the product or service, the taste test based things, the art or music, the video game, and now potentially looking at something that like the health and well being content, um, and maybe a vlog or like travel vlog or collaborations. Those were categories I wanted to have some content for too when I first started the channel. But so if I'm doing that, like 8, 9, maybe even 10 categories of content, um, the problem I'm going to come across at a certain point is like I was thinking you do 2 months, say January 1st all the way to the end of February, that's going to give you roughly 9.5 weeks, because a month is about 4 1/3 weeks long. So 2 months should be kind of 9, depending on where you start during the week. And so I was thinking at the end of February, that's a good cutoff point to stop for a bit, and then give yourself a month of time where you're not working full tilt at a project. Only now, after 2 days of not working on projects, the realization of the sheer inertia that I've hit is making me second guess whether or not I want to do that to myself again. Maybe a week off, maybe 2 weeks off max, but a whole month I'm gonna completely lose all momentum, and it's gonna take me forever to get back up to speed to doing this again. And I want to do this all year long. So I'm rethinking some of that. But in the same pattern of rethinking some of that, I'm also trying to figure out, okay, if I make adjustments to include a health and well-being category and maybe a vlog category, like a travel vlog category, and maybe a collaboration category. I like the idea of devoting a week to each and doing a week of live content. But it might be a little hard to get a person every day for a collab week, for a live collab. And I also feel like I'm not a travel vlogger. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling because I'm going to go to Hawaii, Alaska, through much of Canada, and I'm probably going to be pretty sure during summer be driving down to Chattanooga from New England, and from Chattanooga I will potentially be heading over to 3 of the southern states, and then if I head out to Chattanooga, I might hit a few of the states that I can on the way to it and the way from it. And when I'm leaving Chattanooga, I'm not coming back to New England. I'm headed over to California for VidCon about a month after the event I'm going to in Chattanooga. How many times can I say Chattanooga? But if I head out to California, I've got a month. I can see if I can dilly-dally my way through some of the southern states and pick up any YouTubers or content creators out that way. And if I grab creators on the way out there, I might be able to do some content like one or 2 days, maybe even 3 days a week, but not every day. And I kind of want to make the maximum value for that. So I don't know what I would do for live content when I'm doing that. And then I hit VidCon. I would love to do a live update each day of VidCon. That would be kind of fun. And then after that, I'm heading up to the Pacific Northwest to maybe stop along the way and talk to content creators there. But I'm headed towards Alaska at that point, because it'll be mid-July, and I can hit Alaska in probably around late July, and then take Canada back and go back through Canada on the way to New England again. And I have to pick up some of the. I have to get North Dakota and Iowa and Wisconsin because they fell through on my last trip. And Philadelphia also needs, or not Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I think I'm looking at a potential space in Pittsburgh for the other channel. So the possibility of doing content creators in those areas. And I never got to see Niagara Falls. I probably won't this time either. Because it turns out trying to do that during summertime, it's a little too touristy a time frame to make that work well. I kind of feel the same way about what is it? Yellowstone Park. It'd be a great place to visit, but not during tourist season. It becomes a traffic trap, and it's just insanely difficult to handle. I don't do like massive tourist pit traps. They just, I feel mildly agoraphobic at that point. It also didn't help that the last time I went through that region, I had already been on the road for months, absolute months. My budget was running out. I was sort of pretty tired, and I have a chronic digestive ailment, so finding food I can eat while I travel was hard enough. Finding food while traveling where you have no place to sleep, so you sleep in your car, you don't have refrigeration, and you have no budget for food anymore. I started to get kind of cranky towards the end of that trip. I won't be on the road nearly as long this time. At least that's the hope. I will leave in early June and be down in Chattanooga to VidCon for early July to mid-July-ish. And then takes about a week probably to get up to Alaska at that point. And so it might be early August by the time I've made it through the 13 stops in Canada. So if I do that, it's not super bad. It's 2 months, it's not 6. So I think it's not going to be quite as hard on me. But yeah, that's hope. That's the hope anyway. I'm going to see if I can do some funds campaigning to get some kind of coverage so I don't have to out of pocket it this time. Because that was, it was moderately expensive as the trip goes. I did everything I could to cut costs to almost nothing. Gas cost was hugely expensive. The other big cost was while I was traveling, the cost of truck stop showers was not nice. That was expensive. And I sort of ran longer during that trip than I intended to take, so my budgeting kind of chewed that up. But the original setup I did for that was I basically eliminated all costs back here except for a storage unit for my belongings. And then it made it a little more possible that like what I would otherwise spend for costs here, I spent for gas and food while I was traveling, and it worked to some degree. But it turns out California's gas prices are not cheap. I think I was paying for a solid month out there. I'm used to something around the price of about $2.30 to $2.50 per gallon. And so that ate through the budget faster. And a few of the states that I spent a fair amount of time traversing at certain points, they to pass through the states, even if you only pass through it in one day, it's going to cost you $30 to $50 in tolls. That's an exorbitant amount of funding to pass, especially when you're passing through so quickly. Like if you pass through 3 states where it's going to cost you $50 each state to pass through, you're already, it's almost cheaper at that point between the gas costs and the toll costs to take a flight to the state, walk around or whatever you're gonna do. It's just like, yeah, it makes it hard to do that travel, and I'd like to defray some of that cost with maybe some fundraising. But so what I was looking at earlier, it is sort of my day off, but I'm looking at some of the stuff that I'm hoping to do, and I'm also looking at a calendar to sort of kind of do some test fits to see what would work. And so, like this next week is food, then the 10th is art, and then the 17th starts a video game. And then, if I want to, I can do health and well-being on the 24th, or I can take the 24th as a week off and start the health and well-being on the 3rd. Like 24 through the 2nd could be easily be finishing up everything from these past 2 months and sort of week off. And the 3rd could be the 3rd of March, could be the start of health and well-being. Or I might put that one off and do, because that's essentially the 3rd is the night before I'm theoretically going to go traveling over to Hawaii. So the 4th through the 11th is my trip to Hawaii, theoretically. I haven't booked it yet. But that's what I'm sort of thinking is probably going to work out too. And if I do it that way, I kind of want that to be the travel and collaboration week, so that while I'm traveling, you get a live update of what I'm doing while I'm traveling. And then maybe health and well-being on the 10th. Start health and well-being on the 10th, the day before I come back. And it's a 20-hour flight too. That's the shocking thing. It's 20 hours of flight. Oh, like if I get up at 10 o'clock that morning and my flight departs at, say, like 5 p.m., which one of the possible flights I might book is 5 p.m. Yeah, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. is prep and getting ready and getting to the airport and going and doing what I need to do for that. And then 20 hours from that point on will be a day after, like a day and an hour after I woke up. I sure hope I can sleep on that plane. I have made bus trips to places where I got up after not enough sleep, figuring I'd catch some sleep on the 8-hour bus ride, and had it be such a disruptive busload of people. Like, it's 2 a.m. Do not play your stereo system behind me in the seat and giggle and laugh and fight and do whatever you're doing back there, because you've just made it impossible for me to get any rest between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. when I got to the place where I was going. And it's just sort of like, I hope that doesn't happen on the plane, because being awake for 25 hours when you arrive in Hawaii, that would just destroy me. My health can't sustain that kind of impact often. I should really say it can't sustain it at all, but I have some ways of potentially mitigating some of the consequences. But I wouldn't bet good money on starting a week in Hawaii by pushing that button too hard. So I'm hoping I can make that workable in some way. But 20-hour flight boggles my mind. But once I get there, that should be an update from like the 4th through the 11th, roughly. And then, like, the health and well-being, maybe that'll be a recoup. Like, the health and well-being will be what I do to recuperate from doing that to myself. And then after that, starting back in with a writing week on the 17th, a video week on the 24th. The 31st would be a board game, and then the 7th of April would be a product or service, and then a food related one on the 14th, uh, maybe like an art or music on the 21st, and then a video game on the 28th of April. And then on the 5th of April, maybe that's another week of finishing up from the previous set of content, followed by a vlog and collab on the 12th of May, and then a health and well-being on the 19th, and then 26th would be another book. The 2nd would be a movie or video. 9th, board game. Then the 16th would be product or service. 23rd would be food. 30th would be art, I think. I might go back and forth between art and music, but art. And then 7th would be video game. And then what? We're in July at that point, and I believe VidCon in July was, what was the date on that? VidCon in July was the 10th and 13th, 10th through the 13th. So the 7th, the 7th through the 13th may end up being the collab and travel, the vlog and collab, or whatever I managed to make that work out as. And then the health and well-being would be the 14th through the 20th, where I'm recuperating from VidCon, but I'll also still be traveling. So I'm not sure how to make that work. And then I may just take the 14th through the middle to end of August as not creating new content time, because I'm traveling. I will be out and about for that whole time, and I will probably still update daily, but that may be more of like a travel and vlog update for like a month, because I can't foresee myself writing a book while driving 8 to 12 hours a day sometimes, and stopping at locations to conduct video creation, and like writing or shooting a movie or creating a board game while I'm doing that. That'd be really, really hard to make that happen. So I feel like between early June and late, like mid-June to mid-August, is just going to be a time frame where my ability to do some things is going to be very much hampered. And I have to really plan out that travel trip a little bit to figure out like how many days how many hours a day I'm going to be on the road. Because the last time I did it, it was every 2 days I went to a new location. So I had like a day in location to do the thing I was there to do, then a day to do some other things around the area. And then I was off traveling the next day, and I had to be in the next stop relatively close to it. Sometimes it was need to be at place one on day one, Day 2, you're still in that area. You need to be in the next place on the day 3, or sometimes it was day 3, you could be wherever you needed to be. Day 4, you needed to be at the next stop. So you could have 2 days in between. And for the most part, most of what I needed to do when I was in a location took about an hour or two. So when I landed in a place, sometimes I would have 36 hours of time that I could potentially put towards a project or two. Um, if I plan it appropriately, like if I do a book project for some of that travel time, if it's a book of photographs and uh, just kind of minimal, I don't want to call it narration, but minimal write ups of the experiences at the time, like I could make a coffee table book of photographs I take as I travel and a little bit here and there about the creator's experience while traveling. Um, that's a possibility. Doing a video while I'm traveling, I mean, I could potentially do that too. Board game or a card game's a little trickier, but not super impossible. Product or service I could potentially do, come up with a product, but it's not going to get to market while I'm traveling. And I could do some taste tests while I'm traveling. That's not too hard to do, as long as I don't sabotage my digestive system while I'm out traveling. And then art, I could probably do. Art or music, I could probably do while traveling. So it's not impossible. I can do a lot of this stuff. It'd be really hard to code a video game while traveling. Health and well-being and collabs and travel vlogs, I can do those while traveling. So like the real stickler, I think, at that point is creating creating the board game and creating the video game are going to be the two hard ones, I think. And that's only if I do the writing, well, the book. I shouldn't call it writing, but the book more as a coffee table picture book. And if I do the video as more of a popped up something here. I want to make sure this I'm not missing comments today. If I'm missing comments today, I'm sorry. I have the live chat enabled and I'm able to see it. So theoretically, here it says say something, so I'm going to say something, and there it should work. Yep, so it works. Trying to be a little more aware. Like I think the setting was just it was set to something else. Hello. So I think I got that figured out now. I'm still learning this YouTube live stuff. Tomorrow's going to be interesting because um, the food based week starts tomorrow, and because I had to record some of that content ahead of time, because I can't do that to my system every day of the week, um, I I will be trying out a feature when you go into YouTube and you go to upload a video. One of the things that the upload offers you as a new feature over to the side that has like a preview or a premiere. And I think it's sort of like a live, like a before party for the premiere of your video. And then your video goes up. So the recorded content would follow. And then I think there's sort of like an after party version of the live video that you could do. And I'm very curious about that because I want to see what I can do with that. Because not only like I and sort of like I did with the annotations. Annotations were not meant for what I was doing with it, but using it to make the choose your own adventure stories was using it not as intended application. And I am kind of notorious among local makers and creative people for doing that. Like, here's a thing that I don't know anything about and I don't know what to do with. Well, let's see what we can do with it that's not as intended. I have I remember when I was in high school, I found one of those disposable lighters somebody had thrown out on the ground, and they had some of that plastic flatware that you eat your lunch with sometimes. And so I used the lighter to melt the flatware into a sculpture of a dragon, and that's not what that flatware is intended for. That's not what that lighter is intended to do. But I do that kind of thing a lot. So this feature of doing a premiere before a recorded and edited video and then an after party, I'm sort of percolating it in my brain as potential, like, what else could I do with that? Could I do sort of like a recorded video and then like a year later do a reaction to my video in some way like that? I got to figure out what features it has and how to use them, and then how to use them as not intended. But that's my instinct as soon as I saw that was a feature. But it should be able to enable me to do the food videos. And then I will end up, I think the last one this coming week, for I think the Saturday, will be an actual live one. Because I mean, I can do maybe one live one per week for food stuff. So I've been recording one a week since New Year's, and I've had to double up once, maybe twice, to flesh that up a little bit so that it meets we're in week 5 of content creation coming up here since New Year's, and there are 7 days in a week. So I had to, or week 6, I think we're coming up on. And so I had to, because the first one was on New Year's Eve. And so, like, that was week 0, and one per week since then would have gotten me 5 by the time, and I couldn't do 2 in a row at the end of the week here. So one live at the end of the week will be Saturday, I believe. But it'll give me some practice. I don't know if any of that made sense. It made sense in my head. But it'll give me some practice playing with that extra feature, and give me a chance to figure out maybe other ways that I can use it for other content later on. By the way, thanks for joining the other channel too. It's a little quiet right now as I'm trying to work out a new schedule to fit all the crazy project ideas I have for the year. It's definitely been an interesting, like, motivationally exciting possibility of what I can do with both these channels over the next several months. And so I'm kind of excited and hopeful. But my strategy and planning brain is saying, like, okay, like, I don't know how what you're doing is going to work during these travel periods, and I have to do those travel periods because these are projects that I am dead set on seeing happen. I want to talk to creators all across the country about what they're doing, how they do it, and do a little bit more, like a documentary series of, like, YouTubers and webcomic artists and I don't know, Instagram photographers and people like that, and just kind of like, how do you do what you do? Where did you learn how to do it? It's just sort of like, sometimes it backfires. Well, as long as backfires aren't fatal, yeah, that's usually a good sign. Oh, speaking of experiments, I was looking at, like, I've been looking around at some of those Starlight videos too, and I've seen some people tinkering around. I already have ideas of how to alter the recipe. Like I know there's some there are some old. I'm a collector of old books, and some of my old books include content like pranks and magic tricks. And in those things are things like how to make it so, uh, like a magician might take a pack of cigarettes, and because it's an old book, everybody had cigarettes at the time and everybody smoked. So um, somebody would have a pack of cigarettes and they'd pull out a cigarette and they'd light it and there's nothing wrong. And then they'd offer a cigarette to somebody and the person just couldn't get their cigarette to light. And the way you did that was soaking it in a brine of certain uh, salts, basically a borax or an alum salt, and then drying them out again. And those salts, when they're embedded in the fibers, make it impossible to light. They do not burn. And so I'm looking at like, well, okay, so instead of using the baking soda in the Starlight mix, um, could we use an alum or a borax? And instead of using a PVA glue, which I do a lot of experimenting with plastics and repurposing them to make new things out of. So taking milk jugs and turning the plastic into vacuum formable pieces that click together and make like lampshades and stuff like that. And looking at that kind of stuff, like PVA glue, the white Elmer's glue, essentially is like I think that's probably the wrong choice for the binder. Like you can use an egg glare, which is used in a lot of art, and it's essentially you whip the egg whites up into almost like a meringue with no sugar, and then you let it settle overnight, and one of the liquid proteins settles out at the bottom, and it's a glue that you can use as a binder or a glaze. And I'm wondering if you use that instead of a PVA glue. I also wonder about there's some compounds used in um, hair care, um, beautician, and the guy who created Starlight was a hair specialist, a beautician, I guess, to a certain degree. And for hair removal, you can do these sugaring, which is sort of like a wax, but it's you can make something that's sort of like a hard candy or a taffy, and it embeds the hairs in it, and then you can pull the hairs out. But it should work as a glue relatively well. And I'm wondering if I use that as the glue instead of a PVA glue, because it's a sugar compound, it might potentially carbonize just like the rest of the Starlight compound to make the carbon foam, especially uh, if I need it like some of the hard candies are needed to introduce air into the mix. If I do that just right, I might have a compound that works like Starlight, that's all edible and doesn't stink horribly when burning, and carbonizes really well. And so it might give me a compound that I can do like jewelry making with, where I can use it as like a crucible for melting down some metals or soldering on. And that's what I want to try to do with it. Is I do some stained glass work sometimes, and I've done some jewelry, and as a tinkerer, I've done some electronic stuff. And being able to lay down a mat anywhere I want to that I could do stained glass soldering on and not worry about burning the surface, I just like that would be perfect. If I wanted to do a three-dimensional form in weird pieces of like bottle glass that are rounded and put two pieces together, foil them, and then solder between that, being able to have a shaped form that will hold that in place while I solder but doesn't burn. I want to see how a soldering iron works. Yep, that's essentially what I'm probably going to do one of these days on my other channel is do a test bed of borax, alum, mixtures of borax and alum, different sugaring or waxing compounds, and see what I can do with that. And even the egg white binder might be an option there too. Yeah, I would probably get a I well, I could potentially look into like the infrared laser meter and a thermometer. I want like the lasers sometimes behave weirdly with different colored substances. So if the starlight is white on one part and then charred on another, I'll get a different read. Yeah, I've seen something similar. I've seen the disruption of the carbon, and I don't know if I'm getting a time lag on these showing up or not. Hopefully, it's not too much of a time lag. But yeah, I've seen some. I think it was Cody's lab. He used an oxyacetylene torch, and part of that was the sheer blowing force of it blowing away the carbon. But also, I think a certain part of that is the oxygen actually oxidizes the carbon, whereas a flame that doesn't introduce oxygen would not be as deleterious to your insulating foam. Now, Cody did a good thing with the testing out different ways of messing up with the starlight. But I do remember, like a year ago, there was a guy who did a video of something completely different. He wasn't making starlight, but what he did was, I want to say his name is AVE. Um, he's a chronically well-known tinkerer from Canada, and what he did was he carbonized Wonder Bread. He took pieces of Wonder Bread, put it in a can, and turned it into charcoal. But when he did that, um, Wonder Bread turns out to be just the absolute perfect like foaminess that when it's carbonized, you have a almost like an aerogel quality foam made out of carbon. Now, clearly, as a carbon foam like that, it's going to insulate very well for some of the things that you do, but you're going to hit a point where that carbon's going to burn as you work on it. But like, there's also the question of instead of using like a cornstarch, if I if I carbonized bread like that and just use the carbon as the carbon content, where you don't have to heat it to get it to do that, would it work? Or does it have to burn it in situation to form the foam? Like, I don't know. And like, I want to play with it. I just want to play with a lot of that. I have so many experiments I want to do on that channel. But the traveling and the video content creation is a little tricky to make it all happen. And I'm, of course, making some things harder than it needs to be because I have a series of other videos that I want to do. But the that channel over there, that's going to continue to be the Makerspace videos during the week. And then my weekend videos are going to be a different type of content. So I may do a tinkering video one day on the weekend, and then uh, like an update or Q and A's or that kind of thing on Sundays or something like that. I need to get a little more into the pattern of updating that daily because I have 5 days of content for each place I went to. I think I've only uploaded 7 to 10 of them, and I've been to 42. So I've got content to fill that up for a long while. It's the weekend content that I'll be shooting in person. Um, and actually, one of the things I may do over there, I haven't thought about how to do something similar for here, is I'm never big on like, we've made it to this many subscribers kind of thing. Like, it's, you're not a number to me. You're a person to interact with and share ideas and thoughts with. But I do think sometimes hitting milestones is fun to commemorate. And I was looking at YouTube's method of doing that. They have a silver play button and a gold play button and a ruby play button. The silver play button is 100,000 subscribers. And so I was looking at that, like, and then the gold play button is 1 million subscribers. So it's 1 decimal place movement. So if you do the other direction, turns out that it matches perfectly with how the old alchemists used to categorize the seven metals they considered were the metals of the universe. So you had your gold as number seven, or at number 1,000,000, you have seven decimal places you can move it. Um, so gold, silver, mercury, copper, iron, tin, and lead. So lead would be one subscriber. So I've been thinking about doing, like, I did shoot some content of making a lead play button for first subscriber. And then I thought it was a silly idea, and then I didn't do it. I didn't edit or finish the project, but I may go back and redo that. And then a tin play button, and then a copper play button, or no, an iron play button, then the copper, then a mercury, and each one was going to be in a different art style. And so I had a lot of fun just coming up with marking those milestones. I may go back and revisit that, but I don't know if it's worth marking milestones here or not. And if so, how would I do that here? I'm thinking it would be kind of fun to do something similar, but I'm, I go back and forth on it. It seems kind of like tooting your own horn to me. So cool, bismuth sparkles well. Uh, oh, uh, bismuth. Were you gonna do the yeah, the iridescence you get on the regularly stepped crystal formation? People are probably wondering what the, when anybody views this in the archive and they're wondering what I'm talking about. I'm actually responding to the comments on the side by 55 Ramius. Yeah, so bismuth. I think I've seen some experiments with that where you make the iridescent step crystals that form. I have not done that yet. I also know it's diamagnetic. If you build a big enough block of it and you play with some magnets within it, you can actually get things to levitate between pieces. Not sure how to do that myself, but it's something I would be willing to play with. Mad science is a fun hobby. Well, actually, I did want to make a T-shirt at one point that said "Mad science is really more of an art than a science." But um, yeah. So wow, we're running on 53 minutes tonight. It was nice to have somebody to talk to in the chat tonight. Yeah, yeah. I'm a materials guy. Again, it's one of those encounter a material and go like, okay, so how can I use this as not intended? What can I do with this that nobody thought somebody would do with this? And like, I do have a slight tendency to accumulate what other people would consider trash until I'm ready to use it on a project. The funny thing is, like, I know I can use egg cartons, toilet paper tubes, Pringles cans, milk jugs to do all sorts of interesting projects with. The trouble with that is, in order to get enough of the raw materials to do things with, you have to have 30 milk jugs and 120 Pringles cans, or 300 toilet paper tubes to have the raw materials to play with. And so I have had a roommate in the past who goes, "Would you please stop collecting garbage?" Like, it's only garbage until you see what I do with it in the next month. The taking a tray of like Oreo cookies when you're done with the Oreos that you serve at a party or whatever, taking the tray out and hitting it with a heat gun turns it into an individual plastic tile that's perfectly flat. And if you heat that up again, you can bend it around a ring mandrel and you can write on it with Sharpie markers, and the marker will fuse to the hot plastic. And so you can make plastic jewelry out of it. And so yeah, I've played with some of that stuff. um, I've also associated with a lot of tinkerers, and there's sort of a running gag where if you're working on a project and at some point you don't bleed, your project's not a success because you haven't made the blood sacrifice to the creative gods. And so there's, I would say, most of the projects that I've tinkered on, there has been some minor injury that has bled a little bit, so kind of holds true. But writing, video creation, board game design sometimes involves cutting out raw material, so you can sometimes injure yourself. Um, Product creation sometimes. Eating, not usually a blood sacrifice involved in that, but maybe. Artwork, you could use blood in art, but you don't have to. And then, yeah, video games, not so much. Well, unless it's virtual bloodletting. Yeah, but yeah. Okay, 56 minutes. Thanks for joining me tonight. Tomorrow night, I believe I'm going to try to start up. I'll start up at 9:30, like my usual time frame, and see what I can do for the live premiere starting at 9:30, and then give a little lead-in time because I believe the video is like 30 to 40 minutes long, and then maybe something afterwards. It's going to start to run really long at that point because I have done some of those that I pre-recorded that are going to run about an hour long without the pre-party and the after party if there is that option. So I don't want to make them run too long, but it was a fun experiment, and it leads to more creative adventures for me in the future. So hopefully it's not too boring or strange. Uh, I understand if it's not somebody's game, if they want to hop in for the pre-show and then skip the show. That works. That's fine. Um, but it should all get archived in the right order at that point. And then the week after this one, so next Sunday, I will be starting a piece of artwork each day. So we'll get back to the more traditional creative ventures. But thanks for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow. Take care.